The dust kicked up in angry clouds as Marcus Hartwell watched another potential buyer shake his head and walk away from the corral. The man had taken one look at the spirited paint mare dancing along the fence line and muttered, "Something about too much trouble for what she's worth." Marcus wiped the sweat from his brow with his worn sleeve, his weathered hands gripping the fence rail until his knuckles went white. The Broken Arrow Ranch hadn't seen a profitable year. In 3 seasons running, drought, falling cattle prices, and his father's mounting medical bills had pushed Marcus to the edge of losing everything his family had built over for generations. He needed every dollar he could scrape together, which meant selling off the horses he'd been training, all except this one stubborn mare that nobody seemed to want. She's got the devil in her. That one, called out Pete Garrison from across the yard. The old ranch hand had been with the Hartwells since Marcus was knee-high to a grasshopper, and his opinion carried weight. Through 3 different riders this month alone. Maybe it's time to consider other options. Marcus knew what Pete meant by other options, and the thought made his stomach turn. Storm Dancer, as he'd named her, was too beautiful and too smart to end up at the rendering plant. Her coat was a patchwork of white and chocolate brown, with intelligent dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to a person's soul. She had breeding, spirit, and speed, but she also had a reputation that preceded her like a storm cloud. The mare had come from the Riverside auction, where she'd been labeled as untrainable and dangerous to handle. The previous owner, a wealthy businessman who'd thought he could buy his way into the horse world, had grown frustrated when professional trainers couldn't break her rebellious spirit. Marcus had bought her for a fraction of what she was worth, drawn by something in her eyes that reminded him of his own stubborn refusal to give up on lost causes. As the afternoon sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Marcus heard the rumble of another truck coming up the long gravel drive. He straightened his shoulders and prepared for another disappointment. But when the vehicle came into view, he was surprised to see it was an old pickup truck held together more by rust and determination than by any proper engineering. The driver's door opened with a protesting squeal, and out stepped a young woman who couldn't have been more than 25. She was dressed in faded jeans, scuffed boots, and a flannel shirt that had seen better days. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and when she turned toward him, Marcus was struck by the intensity of her green eyes. "You, Marcus Hartwell?" she asked, her voice carrying a slight rasp that suggested she wasn't afraid to speak her mind. "That's me," Marcus replied, wondering what business this stranger might have with him. "Can I help you with something?" "Name's Riley McKenna. I heard you've got a horse for sale that nobody else wants." She gestured toward the corral where Storm Dancer was eyeing the newcomer with cautious interest. "That her?" Marcus nodded slowly. "She is, but I should warn you, she's got a reputation. Thrown every rider who's tried to work with her. Most folks around here consider her too wild to be worth the trouble." Riley's lips curved into a smile that was part amusement and part understanding. "Too wild, huh? That's what they said about me growing up." She approached the fence with confident, measured steps, her movements fluid and unhurried. Storm Dancer, instead of shying away as she did with most strangers, actually moved closer to investigate. "I don't have much money," Riley continued, never taking her eyes off the mare. "Lost my job at the Henderson place last week when they decided they didn't need a horse trainer anymore. But I've got good hands and a lot of patience, and sometimes that's worth more than cash." Marcus studied the young woman carefully. There was something about the way she carried herself, the way Storm Dancer was responding to her presence, that made him pause. The mare was actually standing still at the fence, her usual nervous energy replaced by curious attention. "What makes you think you can handle her when nobody else has managed?" Marcus asked. Riley reached out slowly, letting Storm Dancer catch her scent before gently touching the mare's muzzle. The horse didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into the contact, something Marcus had never seen her do with a stranger. "Because I understand what it's like to be misunderstood," Riley said simply. "People see wild and assume broken. They see independent and think stubborn. But sometimes what looks like rebellion is just a spirit that hasn't found its proper match. The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He'd been feeling misunderstood himself lately, fighting to save his ranch while everyone around him suggested he should just give up and sell to the developers who'd been circling like vultures. Maybe this young woman understood more than she was letting on. I can offer you 500, Riley said, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a wrinkled envelope. It's not much, but it's everything I have, and I promise you, if you give me a chance with her, neither of us will let you down. Marcus looked at the money, then at Riley, then at Storm Dancer, who was now nuzzling the young woman's hand with something that looked remarkably like affection. $500 wouldn't solve his financial problems, but it might buy him a little more time. More importantly, something told him that this woman and this horse belonged together. Tell you what, Marcus said after a long moment. Keep your money for now. Let me see what you can do with her first. If you can ride her without getting thrown, we'll talk about a price that works for both of us. Riley's eyes lit up with a mixture of gratitude and determination. You won't regret this, Mr. Hartwell. Over the next hour, Marcus watched in amazement as Riley worked with Storm Dancer. She didn't try to dominate or force the mare into submission. Instead, she seemed to communicate with her through subtle body language and quiet patience. When she finally swung up into the saddle, Storm Dancer stood perfectly still for a moment, as if testing this new partnership, then began to move with a grace and willingness that took Marcus's breath away. They moved together like they'd been partners for years, horse and rider in perfect harmony. Riley guided Storm Dancer through a series of maneuvers that showcased the mare's natural athletic ability and intelligence, proving that all she'd needed was someone who understood her nature, rather than trying to change it. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the landscape in shades of gold and purple, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He approached Riley as she dismounted, her face glowing with the joy of connection he'd rarely seen between horse and rider. How would you feel about staying on here at the ranch? He asked. I could use help with the other horses, and it's clear Storm Dancer has found her person. Room and board, plus a fair wage, and Storm Dancer comes as part of the deal. Riley's smile could have powered the entire ranch. I'd like that very much, Mr. Hartwell. As they walked toward the ranch house together, Storm Dancer following behind like a faithful dog. Marcus realized that sometimes the best solutions came in unexpected packages. He'd thought he was just trying to sell a difficult horse, but instead he'd found exactly what his struggling ranch needed. Someone who understood that being wild didn't mean being broken, and that the right partnership could transform even the most challenging situations into something beautiful. The Broken Arrow Ranch had found its second chance, and it had come in the form of a young woman and a horse that everyone else had given up on, proving that sometimes the most precious things in life are the ones labeled too wild for ordinary people to handle.